Now let me show you just a couple of these. I'm not going to have time to go into all of them in great detail, but there are a couple of issues here. Let me try to segment this into three basic areas. One is capturing class notes, taking notes, and the other would be mathematics and formulas and graphing calculators and things like that. And then the other would be being organized, keeping up with the class schedule, when things are due, etc. Have your kids ever gotten disorganized with some stuff? I don't know about yours, but mine has a book bag that must weigh 100 pounds, and I open it up, and there are physical notebooks in there, and papers strewn all over, and half-cocked, in the notebook, and I'm wondering if she can find anything, frankly. And so the iPad will help with this. So let me show you just a couple of things. I'm just going to highlight these just briefly. One of the great programs on this is called Evernote. And by the way, because of the way this is set up, your children will not lose their notes anymore. And here's why. Because when they put the notes in here, or the teacher shares a note with the student, and it goes to the student's iPad from the teacher, it's backed up automatically in the cloud. And so the dog can't eat the homework anymore. All right? And the advantage of that, and I'll get to this a little bit later too, is if something happens to the iPad, they'll be handed a loaner iPad, they'll log in with their ID, and all their work is restored immediately into their iPad so they won't lose it. So let me give you an example. So let's say I'm a student, I'm in one of these classes, and I've set up a couple of my notebooks. I've got one for Mrs. Whaley, one for Mr. Forster, and one for Mrs. Fitzpatrick's classes. And so this is where I'm archiving some of my notes, so I might go into the English class. And Mrs. Whaley, not only do I take my own notes, but perhaps she sent me some notes, and those go into my Evernote folder, and I open it up, and I automatically have what Mrs. Whaley has sent to me in my class, so it's always there. And let's say I forget I left my iPad in my locker. Now, they'll never do that, but just suppose they did, and they come home to your computer. Well, guess what? Evernote's free. You can put it on your computer. Your student logs in with his or her ID, and all of their notes are on that computer as well. Or at grandma's house. It doesn't make any difference, right? And so all that information would then be there. Or another example would be, let's say, and I'm going to show you the note-taking app here in just a moment, but let's just assume for a moment that I'm a student in Mr. Forster's class, and I've been taking notes from his lectures on geography. And they're in my Evernote notebook, so I open it up. And here are my handwritten notes on the iPad from Mr. Forster's class. Automatically backed up and always available to me. The other neat thing about this is, and I won't take a lot of time with this, but they can create their own notes, and when they do create their own notes, they have various options. They can type their notes in, they can import notes, they can be doing research on the internet, and anything they're finding on their internet in relation to a subject or a research paper, they can dump immediately from the internet into Evernote, and it's right there in their own notebook for future reference in writing their paper. Or, if they prefer, they can hit the record button, and they can actually record audio in their notes. So they could record ideas as they're reading an article, make audio comments, and then refer back to those when they're writing their paper. So there's a lot more features to this, but another example would be, you'll notice that they could have a notebook for projects, one for research, and for their individual classes. So they can do almost anything they would like to do with this program. So that's one of the programs that we're going to have on their iPad. The other one is the actual note-taking system itself. Now, in order to set a good example and to experientially understand what students would experience and what teachers would experience, I have forced myself into a paperless environment myself. So every time I interview prospective employees or I have a staff meeting, I take all of my notes now on my iPad. You won't find a legal pad in my office anywhere. And so this would be an example of this. Let's say the student is in, again, Mr. Forster's class. And again, this is an example of some notes that this student took. You can actually just write on here in any way you want, original notes, or you can go ahead and make annotations, any way that you would like to. If you would like, you can also highlight these notes, just like you would with a legal pad. And the beauty of that is, again, that all of those are saved. They can email these notes to themselves. They can throw their notes into Evernote for keeping. They can copy and paste them. Any number of options that they have available. They can make as many notes as they would like to for any given class, and just keep all of their notes always available to them. So that's an example of the note-taking program itself. The other one is the Bible program itself. Now this is I don't know if you've ever used a digital Bible or not, but it has the whole Bible. Of course, you can get all kinds of commentaries and things that go with it. But what's really neat about this is you can take this and then you can highlight, if you would like, those verses. It has cross-references built in to it. You can also, like the digital textbooks, you can add your own notes. You can email these notes to someone if you would like to do that. You can highlight the notes. You can save it to your favorites folder, etc. And so they can do all sorts of things with reference to the Bible. It's very easy to navigate. In addition to that, they can search for keywords such as, I've got here, God is love, and it pulls up all the verses where that phrase is actually listed. They can go back into their history, where they've been in their Bible textbook, etc. So they always have it with them. They can add their own notations, highlight things, add their own notes, etc. So that's another example of an electronic textbook, but in this instance, the Bible. Now, let's talk about being organized just for a moment. Look at the calendar application. Now, I've got this blank just at the moment, but imagine this just for a moment. The teacher creates a class calendar, and on this class calendar, it simply lists when things are due, upcoming projects, class events, any number of things. And the teacher says, I'm going to share this class calendar with my class of students. So the student opens up his or her iPad and says, I want to see what is in my English calendar. So the student clicks on English and, clicks on English, and if you're on the right, there you go. And the English class shows up, or any of the ones that you do or do not want. So for example, I can take these off. Nothing's showing up right now, so it's blank. And I say, I only want to see what's in English. And so they can click on English and just have that to show up as well. Or geography or science, depending upon the week and where we have all the notes. They can also create their own notes in here, and so they can combine their own personal notes with what the teacher has shared with them on the application as well. And so they can pick and choose any number of calendars. There's a master school calendar, there's a chapel calendar, there's a sports calendar, and all of those can be imported directly into the student's calendar. We were asked Tuesday night whether or not parents could have this calendar shared with the parents, and we're investigating that. We believe that that's the case. We will confirm that, which is what that means is this, that you would also, without trying to figure out using RenWeb, you simply, some of you don't like RenWeb, but now you open up the calendar and you see exactly what your children see on there as well. Right? So it's a great organizational tool. So that they have access to the teacher's calendar and or any calendar that they add personally to their device at the same time. Another great feature is the reminder feature. So they can create a list of reminders or to-do list, either one, on this reminder application, and they can do it by class if they would like. So in this case, this is English. It says English homework, chapter 1 due tomorrow, essay due on November the 15th, read The Hobbit by next Friday, and they can set alarms on this. It says, remind me 2 days before the event, etc. So an alarm will pop up and say, remember, you've got tests tomorrow morning on whatever. And so you can do it for geography, science. It could be a personal one, such as ask Dad to borrow the car, whatever the case may be. So they have their own organizational system built directly into the iPad in conjunction also with the calendar app itself. Now, how many of you have already spent or you anticipate spending money on expensive calculators? Expect any of you at all? Okay. Well, the iPad comes with its own graphing calculator. And this is just one example of this. I've got it oriented a certain way, so it would normally be the other way around. And there are all sorts of function abilities in this graphing calculator, and it's already built in, and it's just a part of what they automatically will receive as part of this. Now, in addition to that, let's say they're in math classes, and let's say that they are in algebra, and they just can't remember all the formulas. All right? There's a mathematics formula application already built in, and so they can check any number of different formulas as they're studying for tests, doing their homework, etc., and they'll have an immediate reference source for looking at mathematical equations and formulas. There's a lot more to it than that. I'm not going to take time to go into all of those, but you can get a sense of just some of the things that are available. You've got iTunes U, you've got iBooks, you've got the Kindle book, you've got the e-textbooks, you've got Google Drive for accessing documents, you've got the dictionary and thesaurus, you've got word processing, presentation software, spreadsheet software, etc. So there's a whole host of things that come preloaded on the iPad.